Welcome. Tonight, we'll take a slow journey into the history of the Tower of London. This fortress, standing by the River Thames for nearly 1,000 years, has been many things. A palace, an armory, a symbol of royal power, and most famously, a prison. The pace will be unhurried. Details will arrive one by one, like the quiet flow of the river outside the tower's walls. You may listen closely, or simply let the words drift over you, carrying you toward rest. Imagine yourself entering the tower, not as a guest, but as a captive. The gates close, and the cool, damp air settles around you. Stone walls rise on every side, their weight pressing down with a quiet, heavy permanence. If you were important, your cell might be a chamber with a narrow window and perhaps a servant. But for most, it was far simpler. Rough stone, straw bedding, and air thick with age and dampness. Food was uncertain. Some relied on family to send provisions, while others survived on thin pottage or scraps from the kitchens. Hunger was common. Time moved slowly here. You might scratch marks into the wall or carve your name into the stone. Some of those etchings survive, faint but still visible centuries later. Sounds carried strangely within the tower. The shuffle of guards, faint clatter of hooves in the yard, the distant cry of gulls over the river, reminders of a world you could not reach. The hardest part was waiting, not knowing if you would be released, or tried, or executed. The days stretched on, heavy and uncertain. At night, the tower grew quieter still. Torches flickered, straw rustled, and footsteps echoed through corridors. Sleep came slowly, uneasy and thin. Life here was not constant torment, but a slow erosion of freedom, of comfort, of certainty. Day by day, the tower pressed its silence into those it held. Now, let us turn from the ordinary prisoner to someone whose story still lingers in every stone of the tower. Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII. Her life began far from the tower, in the courts of Europe, where she was admired for her wit, her elegance, and her sharp mind. She returned to England and caught the eye of Henry, who was already married to Catherine of Aragon. The king's desire for Anne and her refusal to become simply his mistress set in motion years of upheaval that would transform England. When Henry finally married her, after breaking with the Pope and declaring himself head of the Church of England, Anne was crowned queen. For a brief time, she seemed secure. But in the Tudor court, favor could rise and fall swiftly. Anne's position weakened when she failed to provide a son. Whispers of betrayal and accusations of treason grew louder. In May of 1536, she was arrested and brought to the Tower of London. Her arrival was described by observers. She entered not through the usual Traitor's Gate, but through the main entrance, still as a queen. Yet once inside, she was placed under guard. In her chambers, she prayed, she wrote letters, and she waited. The charges brought against her, adultery, incest, conspiracy, were shocking. But most historians believe they were manufactured, a convenient means for Henry to rid himself of a wife he no longer wanted. A trial was held within the tower itself, and though she defended herself with composure, the outcome was already decided. In the days that followed, Anne is said to have faced her fate with a calmness that surprised her captors. On the morning of May the 19th, she walked to the scaffold, built within the tower grounds. She was granted the mercy of a swift execution by sword, brought from France. Her body was laid to rest in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, within the tower walls, where it remains to this day. Anne Boleyn's downfall turned the tower into more than a prison, became a stage on which the drama of power, ambition, and fear was played out at the highest levels of society. For the people of England, her story was a warning. For Henry, it was a cold step toward the future he desired. And still, the memory of Anne lingers, her name carved into the very identity of the tower. Every ancient fortress gathers stories, and the Tower of London has more than most. Among them, none is more enduring than the mystery of the lost princes. In the year 1483, two young boys, Edward V, aged 12, and his younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, were brought to the tower. They were the sons of King Edward IV, heirs to the throne. At first, their stay was explained as a preparation for Edward's coronation. But the weeks passed, and no coronation came. Instead, their uncle, Richard of Gloucester, declared himself king. After that, the boys were seen less and less. Eventually, they disappeared altogether. No records speak of their deaths. No witnesses stepped forward at the time, only silence, and the unsettling absence of two rightful heirs. Did Richard order their deaths? Were they smothered in their sleep? Or perhaps spirited away in secret to live unknown lives? Centuries later, bones were discovered beneath a staircase in the tower. They were reburied with honor, yet questions remain. Were they truly the princes, or the remains of others long forgotten? Even today, the mystery is unresolved. The tower holds other secrets too. Archaeologists have uncovered layers of its long life. Norman foundations from the 11th century, fragments of Roman walls beneath, and carved graffiti left by prisoners in despair. Some inscriptions are simple names, scratched in haste. Others are elaborate designs, detailed crosses and coats of arms, etched into stone with infinite patience. They are quiet voices across time, still visible if you look closely. Legends cling to the tower as well, stories of ravens kept within its walls, for it is said that if they ever leave, the kingdom itself will fall. Visitors still see them today, black feathers glistening in the light, their presence both ordinary and symbolic. The tower is not just a monument of stone, it is a layered record of kings and captives, of myths and mysteries, of secrets half buried and never quite explained. And in its silences, it still invites the imagination to wander, filling the empty spaces with questions. Not everyone who lived within the tower's walls came as a prisoner. For centuries, it was also a royal residence, a place where kings, queens, and their courts displayed wealth, authority, and ceremony. Imagine the scene not from the cell of a captive, but from the chamber of a monarch. Fires burned in great hearths, warming vast stone halls. Tapestries soften the walls, their colors rich with scenes of hunts, battles, or biblical tales. Tables were laid with pewter, silver, and on rare occasions, gold. Music drifted through the corridors, the sound of lutes and voices, reminding all who listened of their place in the hierarchy of courtly life. The White Tower, at the heart of the complex, was built not only as a fortress, but as a visible declaration of dominance. To enter its halls was to be reminded of the power of the crown. Nobles gathered for feasts, guests, ambassadors attended ceremonies, and soldiers stood watch in shining armor. For the elite, the tower could be a place of grandeur. But even in such surroundings, the tower never let one forget its other side. Guests at banquets might be aware that just beyond the walls, prisoners were held in silence. A coronation feast might echo in one hall, while in another, a noble captive contemplated his uncertain future. The tower was a space of dual purpose, both gilded stage and grim cage. Royal ceremonies also tied the tower closely to the life of the city. Monarchs would often spend the night here before their coronation, departing in a grand procession to Westminster Abbey. To watch such a procession was to see the king or queen, not just as a ruler, but as a living embodiment of stability and order. The tower, massive and enduring, reinforced that message. So within these walls, we find both extremes: velvet and chains, feasts and famine, ceremony and solitude. The tower reflected the society it served, layered, unequal, and always centered on the authority of the crown. And so, our slow journey through the Tower of London comes to a gentle close. We have walked as a prisoner, feeling the cold stone and the long silence of confinement. We have stood with Anne Boleyn, watching her final days unfold within these walls. We have wandered among mysteries, the lost princes, the carved graffiti, the ravens that still circle. And we have stepped into the lives of kings and nobles, who turned the tower into a stage of splendor as well as fear. The tower endures, quiet and unshaken, its walls still keeping their secrets. As you rest now, you may reflect on how far removed our lives are from those of the past. No heavy gates closing behind you, no uncertain fate waiting in silence, only comfort quiet in the steady rhythm of the present. Let the tower fade into the distance, its outlines soft against the night sky, while you drift into stillness. The story has been told, the stones remain, and you can rest.